you don't like the word cardiac cycle, you can say heartbeat. So this is how my heart makes the beat, how my heart pumps blood. Saladin uses cardiac cycle all the time. So look on the picture on the left and tell me what's happening in the left-hand picture.
Blood is going into the heart.
Blood's going into the where?
Heart.
Be a little more specific.
Ventricles.
To the ventricles. Very good. So step one, blood enters the ventricles. Flows into the ventricles, fills the ventricles. How's it getting in there? They mentioned the animation. 70% of the blood's filled by, nope, that thing's holding me down.
Gravity.
Gravity. You know, the ventricles are the lower chamber. Gravity helps fill them. So blood's going to enter my ventricles by gravity. I'm going to fill up my bottom chambers. That's picture one. What are the valves? What about these valves? Which ones are they and what are they? Which ones are those? The tri and bi. Are they open or shut?
Open.
Very good. So we're going to add that too. Through the open, tri, and bi valves. Because they have to be open if the blood's going to come in to my heart, into my ventricles. Look at the picture on the right. Tell me what's different in the picture on the right and the picture on the left. What's emptying? The atria. Very good. So the atria have done something. So what have they done there?
Contract.
They've contracted. So step two, the atria. Which ones? Right or left?
Both.
Both. Remember, it's working as a unit. So atria, plural. Contract. Okay. Here's where we get to add some vocabulary. You can say contract. I understand that. You can say squeeze. I get that too. The word you're going to use, though, in your career is that one, systole or systole. When doctors say systole or systolic, they mean squeezing or contracting. So you're just going to get used to that word for the rest of your life. You can say contract or squeeze, they're synonyms, but the word you want to start using is systole. So this is atrial systole. The atria are contracting. Why are they contracting? What are they doing when they contract?
Forcing the other 30% of the blood.
Very good. And push blood, more blood into ventricles. So my ventricle is going to fill by gravity, and my atria are going to squeeze more blood into my ventricles, which is what you see here. So the atria are squeezing or systole, and they're driving more blood in there. So what's the purpose of these two steps? Glad you asked. I'm trying to fill my ventricles. So those two steps are trying to fill my ventricles with blood. We're trying to load the heart with blood. All right? So I'm filling my ventricles. Let's see if I'm making this up. I'm probably not. Let's see. Oh wow, ventricular filling, atrial contraction, known as the ventricular filling stage. So my goal of the first two steps is to get blood into my ventricles. Make sense? Okay, smarties. Look at the picture here versus the one on the left. This is where we left off step two. Look at this one. Tell me what changed.
Well, the ventricles contracted.
Ventricles are squeezing and... Ah! Yeah! I feel testosterone coming on. All right, number three. So step three, my ventricles contract. Which ones? Both of them. Remember, it's always the set. So tell me the doctor word I'm going to say. Ventricular what? Systole. Systoles always contract. So it doesn't matter what chamber, I'm still going to do systole. So my ventricles are contracting, performing systole. Right? But then what did my valves do?
Close.
They close. So I'm going to close the tri and bi valves. So my ventricles are squeezing. That shuts my, or closes my tri and bi valves. There's a sound there. Does anyone know what the official word for closing the valves is? Love. It'd be $50, right. So when you're hearing a heartbeat, that sound is what you're starting to see with these valves. That's what you're hearing, is the lub. One of them is that. So I've shut my valves because I've squeezed my blood, and I don't want the blood going back. So Saladin has a big word for that one. His big word is isovolumetric contraction. That there. So if you're reading Saladin, he'll say it's isovolumetrically contracting. I don't care if you know that. But I'll put it on here anyway. So step 3, my ventricles are squeezed. Yes?
So the ventricles contract and that forces the valves closed?
Yes,
Okay.
basically. Right, the force of the blood hits the check valve, slams them shut, and that forces the blood to not go out. Right. There's actually a little bit of an interplay. So what's happening, worthless trivia, when these ventricles get the signal to contract, it actually begins to pull on the valves slightly before the blood hits. So they're already beginning to contract before they hit. That's just, you can put them together. So, in step 3, I'm squeezing my ventricles, trying to get the blood out with the door shut. So, where's the blood going to go if I close those doors? Look at this picture and tell me what's changed. Which valve's open? The semilunar valve. So step number 4. The semilunar valve's open. Or forced open. Remind me which one my semilunar valves are.
Aortic.
These two, pulmonary aortic. So the semilunar valves are forced open. So I'm squeezing my blood, and that forces the valves open. So on step 5, which I'm going to put over here, if I open those doors and I'm squeezing, where's the blood going to go?
To the lungs and body.
Not yet.
To the artery vein.
Well, 5, sorry. Blood is going to enter the arteries. Right? Because aren't those arteries up there at the top? These are arteries, right? So my blood's leaving my ventricles and entering my arteries. Which arteries are they entering?
Pulmonary and aortic.
Very good. The pulmonary artery and the aorta. Because remember, it's both sides. So some of the blood is going to my lungs, some is going to my body. That leads us to step 6. The blood goes to the organs. What organs would the pulmonary artery take the blood to? To the lungs. And the aorta would take it to the body, or systemic circuit. Those are the circuits. Right? So some of my blood goes to my lungs, some of the other blood goes to my body. Right? So if you look, I'm squeezing my heart. The blood now goes out the open doors into my arteries to my body, into my lungs. Make sense? But we're not done yet. Because take a look at this picture on the right and tell me what changed.
Heart is empty. There's the valves and ventricles and atrials are empty.
Aha! That's right. We got a lot of things. Number 7. The ventricles relax. If you don't like the word relax, you can say expand. But you don't like that word. What's the word doctors are going to use for diastole or diastole? So word of the week. Diastole means to relax. Systole means to contract. Those are guaranteed to be on your quiz next week. All right? So I'm going to relax my ventricles or expand them or grow them. Why didn't the blood come back in? Which valves closed? These ones, the ones that were just open, had to shut to keep the blood out. So what valves are those?
Semilunar aortic.
Semilunar valves. The semilunar valves have to close. So they open to let the blood out, wherever that is. Where is that? Yeah, open here, step 4. And they have to shut to keep the blood out. What sound does that make to your doctor? That's a dub. Or dub. So one heartbeat is step 3 and step 7. One bang, 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 bang. Is you're hearing the nose close and knees close. We're not done yet. Because look at the next picture I'm going to show you. What's happening there?
Looks like step one.
It does look like step one, but not completely.
But this is the atrium.
Because look, something's different between the picture on the left, the picture on the right. What happened differently between that picture and this one?
The valves open.
The valves open. Which valves?
The try and buy.
Yeah! All right. Let's open, try, and buy valves. And why do we want those to open?
Blood
To
connection.
let blood in.
Blood.
Now you're going to go to step number 1 and repeat the whole thing again. So my heart then fills by gravity. I squeeze blood in. I squeeze and shut the door. The blood goes out. I shut the door. I redo it again. 72 times a minute. Thou shalt know these 8 steps, thou shalt. Make sense? All right. Let's go through it one more time. Step 1, I'm filling my ventricles. How with gravity? How's it getting in through the open door? I'm then going to use my atrium and systole push more blood in. I then squeeze my ventricles or systole my ventricles. That shuts the doors. That then forces the other doors, the pulmonary and aortic, to open. Blood begins to leave my heart and the arteries to go to my body and my lungs. My ventricles diastole or relax. That closes the doors to keep the blood from leaking back in. And then I open the tri and bicuspid to allow the blood to start flowing through, and you do it again. Right? So I'm going to load my ventricles. This middle part's called the ejection phase. So 3 and 4 are the ejection part. So I'm filling, I'm ejecting. So I fill my ventricles in step 1 and 2. I eject blood in step 3 and 4. And then you can come up with your own words for those ones. Load, shoot, score is how we sort of jokingly fill it. Right? I fill, I eject, and I relax. Fill, eject, relax. That's basically the 8 steps that you have. Make sense? Okay. If that made sense to you, which you claim it does, I'm going to believe you. This is not a shameless self-promotion to go to my website. It's not. Trust me. You're going to look at these links here. We're going to go to some online physiological animations. In the dark ages, they used to sell you a CD-ROM with your textbook that had these. Since you don't get the CD-ROM anymore, there are people who are nice enough to post them for you. But this should work. Yeah. So I'm going to use the Interactive Physiology PhysioWeb to show you these animations. So let's go here. What does that mean? No! No, you're not really. No. Okay, hold on. You do? No! Yeah, yelling always helps, right? Let's try this one. Yes, that works. But there's more than one. Okay, so this is not anatomically correct, right? If you talk to a plumber, they actually know hearts really, really well because of, it's a pump with pipes, right? So this is again showing that illustration. You have 2 separate pumps. You have a right side heart for your pulmonary side, a left side heart for your body side. And each one has arteries and veins. They go at the same time, doing the same work. They're just doing it to different places in your body. One side is red, one side is blue, right? The more anatomical version is this one, showing the same picture, right? Pulmonary, systemic, pulmonary, systemic. Remember, both sides are going at the same time, right? Okay, if you agree with that review, we're going to go through now the actual cardiac cycle. So remember, this is based on the idea of these valves working. So this is showing again that you have 4 valves, 2 on each side. So you have your bi and tricuspid, which have different names depending who you talk to. And you have pulmonary aortic. All right? Now I'm going to basically do this. I'm going to fill your heart. eject or systole, and I'm going to relax it or refill. Right? So we're going to use some green blood. Don't ask me why. Right? It's kind of Vulcan motif. Right? So here's my green blood. Right? So I'm going to fill my ventricles in step 1. How's the blood getting in there in step 1?
Gravity.
Mostly gravity, there's back pressure, but basically the blood's just going to drain in my heart by magic. Right? So click the right atrium. Ooh, what happened there? So it contracts, right? Why is it contracting in step 2?
Pushing the
Push
ventricle.
blood in my ventricles, right? So step 1 and 2, I'm trying to fill my ventricles. The left side will be doing the same thing. So both atria contract at the same time. Notice my valve is open, so otherwise the blood wouldn't be able to get anywhere. So I open my door, let the blood in, right? The tri and bicuspids. What happens in step 3? I'm going to contract my ventricles. So it tells me, click a ventricle. Woo! What happened? That's good. What happened there?
Close the valve.
What closed?
The valve.
The tricuspid and bicuspid, both sides, because I don't want the blood going in back, right? So I have to shut the door to force the blood out the other pipes. So I'm going to squeeze my ventricles and shut the doors. Right? That's the lub sound. That's 3, basically. Click that. What's that? What did I just click there? That's the other valve, the semilunars. I have to make them open for the blood to enter the arteries and leave. So I shut the tri and bicuspid and forced open the pulmonary and aortic. So now blood is actually leaving, ejecting. Right? Click the ventricles to return to diastole. So what does diastole mean again? Okay. What else did you see right there when I hit diastole?
The valves.
The valves have to shut, otherwise the blood would just get pulled back in. You want the blood to stay out, right? So I'm going to shut this door when I do diastole, ventricular diastole. And then, notice I reopen the original valves again and have the blood begin back to phase 1, right? So with all of your eyes, watch the blood on the right and left side, watch the valves, and listen to the sounds. That's the lub dub. Notice both sides are doing it at the same time. Tell me when you're sick of this.
All right.
I can watch it all night. Bioboard. I just watch it. See, both sides are doing the same thing in the same order. Different. Make sense? Okay, if that makes sense to you, now we're going to do it graphically. Okay, so you do not have to reproduce these graphs. I'm not going to ask you to make the graph, okay? But I can give you the graphs and ask you to interpret them. So the point of these graphs is you have to be able to understand what these graphs are showing and why this relates to what you did. I'll give you one that you can take a picture of in a few minutes, okay? But these are graphs that are going to walk us through what the heart's doing piece by piece. If you understand the graphs, you understand how the heart's beating, right? So first graph we're going to do is that one. Right there. That's atrial pressure. Okay, it doesn't matter if that's left or right, so both go together. So atrial pressure, if the graph is going up, what is your atrium doing?
Increasing pressure.
Increasing pressure, how would it do that?
Systole.
Filling and squeezing, right? So if my atria are filling with blood and squeezing, the pressure should climb. Does that make sense? If blood leaves my atria, the pressure should go down. So this graph is showing my atria squeezing and relaxing. Squeezing and relaxing, which is step 2, right? Let's watch that graph again. Make sense what you see? Okay. Now the next graph is going to be the ventricle pressure. So let's do that one. Okay, I want you to look at 2 things. Which one's bigger, atrial or ventricular pressure?
Ventricle.
Okay, why is the ventricle so much taller than the atrium?
More bigger contraction.
Bigger contraction to push blood where?
Further.
Further, right? Your atria have to go down 1.5 inches. The ventricles have to pump it to your lungs and your body. So it's going to take more force. You have to squeeze harder. Okay? So when the graph is going up, when the ventricular graph is going up, what's my ventricle doing here? Contracting, or the magic word is systole, right? The graph is going down, or pressure's dropping, my ventricles are diastole. So I have squeeze, relax, systole, diastole. Make sense? Notice how it contracts after the atrium. So atria is step 2, ventricle step 3 and 4. So my atria has to pressurize first, my ventricle comes in second. That make sense? Everything good for that one? Okay. Now we're going to get the harder graph to understand. This is the aortic pressure. This is an artery. Okay, so I want you to look at the shape of the red graph versus the yellow graph. Notice how they're the same shape, more or less. Here's what I want you to try to figure out. Why does my red one only start here and not here?
The smaller space.
Partly.
It always has
Forget
something
those
in it.
It's always under a little bit of pressure.
Let's look on step 3 versus 4. What changed between step 3 and 4 in my heart cycle? Let me turn on the light so you can see it as I point.
Valves.
Right, so remember the ventricles are squeezing before the valves open. And what happens when the valves open? Blood goes where? So I'm going to have pressure in my ventricle before the blood enters the arteries. So you're going to see a time delay. So my ventricles are squeezing, 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 squeezing. The bam! Now the blood can enter my arteries. Now I open the valves and the pressure is relieved by putting it in my arteries. That makes sense? So the arteries only get the pressure once the valves have opened, not all the time. So you pressurize in step 3 to blow it off, as they say, in step 4. Does that make sense? Tell me why it doesn't go down all the way over here.
The valves.
Very good. Remember those valves close to keep the blood under pressure. So I'm going to pressurize, open the pulmonary aortic, close the pulmonary aortic. That way the blood doesn't go to 0 in your arteries. So my arteries are getting the blood only when the valves open and then shut. So you expect that graph to go from here, valve opening, to valve closing. Does that make sense? If you look at the red graph, right, blood pressure is 120/80. Now you catch on to where they're doing those numbers. This is the range between the blood and the arteries that they're measuring, which we'll do next week. Make sense? So if I keep playing that, my arteries are getting the full charge of blood after the valves open and the valves shut to keep the blood in there and not have it go down to 0. Also called the dicrotic mouth. That make sense? And again, if you listen to the sounds, you'll hear those valves closing. First valves close here, second valves close there. Right? Because I'm closing when the ventricles contract and when the ventricles relax. Make sense? Yay! Okay. Now comes the really hard one to understand. Not that one. This is a ventricular volume, which is the size, the capacity of your ventricles. All right. When this graph is going down, your ventricle volume is going down, which means your ventricle's doing what? Contracting, squeezing, systole. I'm squeezing my blood, I get the vessel smaller, right? Okay? So when this is going up, what's my ventricle doing? Relaxing, filling, expanding, diastole. So my graph goes down during systole because I'm squeezing. It goes up during diastole because I'm relaxing. Does that make sense? So pressure and volume are inverted. So as the ventricles get smaller, the pressure goes up. As they get bigger, the pressure goes down. Same as your lungs next term. That make sense? So you're going to expect them to be opposites or inversely related. So far, so good? Okay, so if you watch along, my ventricles are squeezing, the graph goes down, expanding, the graph goes up. Make sense? mouse? Explain that. My mouse is pointing at something. What's your ventricle doing here? Volume's increasing. Can you tell me why my ventricle volume is increasing here?
Atria is contracting.
Yeah! All right, let's do some atria. I'm drooling. This is good. Look at step number 2. The atria's job is to squeeze and push what? More blood into the ventricles. So what would your ventricle do if I shove more blood into it? It'd have to expand. This is the most important concept in EMT land in the universe. Let's write this down. Let's do Starling's law. Actually, I should do it over here. I'll put it actually on the board. I shouldn't have erased all that. That's creepy. Okay, this little peak is called Starling's law, or is an effect of Starling's law of the heart. Okay, remember Wolff's law from 231? What did Wolff say? If you stress a bone, it has to get stronger to not break. Starling said the same thing about the heart. If I stretch a heart, if you stretch heart muscle, what's the heart muscle going to do if you stretch it?
Thicker, stronger.
It's going to contract harder. This is also called the rubber band effect. When you pull back on a rubber band and let it go, it snaps back, right? The more you stretch the rubber band, the harder it snaps. So if I can stretch your heart, it's going to contract more or harder because of the stretch. Make sense? So in step 2 that I erased like a moron, if I stretch my heart with more blood, the ventricles are going to contract harder than before. So in EMT land, they call this preloading. Also called atrial kick. Also called a whole lot of things. If you go over to the EMS department and talk to Mark Hornshaw, he'll talk about preloading, because that's what this concept is. I can stretch your heart out, my heart will kick back harder. I'm gaining extra contraction. So look at the graph. I've increased the amount of distance between here and here. So therefore I'm going to get extra contraction from my heart. That's the job of your atria, is to kick your heart extra blood. Make sense? So the more I stretch my heart, the more my heart will fight back and contract. Make sense? That is the most important concept in your heart. Is Starling's law of the heart. Right? So this little peak is the extra bump I'm giving my ventricles so they contract harder each time. Make sense? Let's do that. So now comes the test of that. Let's do that. So if you look at where this peak is, the atrial kick, what chamber gives that to me? The atria. So look here. The atria are squeezing to cause your ventricles to get bigger so they snap back harder. Right? That's the concept here. Make sense? So that's what that graph's showing, is that you're preloading or atrial kick your heart. Right? That's Starling's law. So that's what that's showing there. I gained this much extra space of blood being pumped out. Make sense? Okay, we're not done yet. Because that's the next set of graphs we have to learn for the next hour. It's that guy. So this is an ECG or EKG, depending on how you learn to spell it. That's a measurement of the electricity in your heart. So this corresponds to what these other graphs are doing. So we're going to take a detour and learn the EKG for the rest of the night. All right? And we'll come back to this. So don't worry, we'll come back to all the graphs. But till then,